You did throw out a first pitch at Nationals Park.
I certainly did.
I have my question to you is, did you bounce it?
No. In fact, I took the whole thing very seriously. I was determined that I wasn't going to let the side down. So I bought myself a glove. I bought my son a glove. He was over the time. So I spent about a week, practicing and asking for advice from American friends of mine as to how you made sure you threw the ball, properly. And then I went down to National Stadium about a few days before the game where I was throwing the first pitch, and I went in and I one of the sort of staff there, caught the ball for me, and we worked the distances out and so on. So by the time I went out on the field, I was quite confident that I would be able to equip myself pretty well, and I did. I mean, it was a strike, by the way. In case you're asking, it was a strike. I wasn't called. There was no umpire there, but I called it as a strike for myself.
Having done that, do you have a different appreciation for just how skilled the game is?
I do.
It doesn't seem that far on TV, but when you're standing out there, you might as well be a mile away.
It's distance. I mean, you really have to think about it. And what I'm amazed at is first of all, the speed and then the accuracy. I mean, speed is one thing. You can probably develop that, but to be throwing the ball at 95 an hour and to get over that relatively small square you have to hit, it's no joke, and I mean, I think the skill of the bowlers is quite extraordinary, and indeed the batsmen, I mean, the hitters to be able to hit a ball flying at that speed and also maybe curving and spinning and so on, quite something. So I think the skill levels of baseball players are quite exceptional. I also love the way they feel. I mean, the exceptional feeling that goes on here. It's just I mean, any ball that's hit, anywhere near one of the players in the outfield, you'll be run out for sure. I mean, the accuracy with which they can, from a long way away, they can hit first base like clockwork. I mean, no problem. It
reminds you of your beloved Waterford.
Well, exactly. I mean, this weekend's been a great weekend in Ireland, as you know, for underdog teams. Your own Cavan, Tipperary winning for the first time in 80 years. Mayo getting into the semi-final, having not won the All-Ireland since 1954 or something. And then Waterford, we haven't won the All-Ireland since 1959. Now in the semi-finals against Kilkenny next weekend. So next weekend's going to be a great weekend for for Waterford fans, I hope.
And sadly, no, as someone said, the COVID was all put together by the Cavan people so that they wouldn't have to buy tickets to go to the game.
Well, I think it would be a terrible thing if Waterford were to win the All-Ireland Hurling Championship this year and nobody able to go to the stadium. One of the good things for me is that because I can't travel home at the moment because of COVID, at least my experience of the All-Ireland semi-final and hopefully final will be the same as everyone else's. I'll be watching it on screen. But I'm actually looking this year for what I call a rarity double. Mayo to win the football after 65 years and Waterford after 61. Wouldn't that be quite something?
Well, we'll give you half of it. I'm not going to give you Mayo just yet. Now, in all fairness.
Okay, Gavin for you, yeah.
Well, now listen. It's, you know what? I'm kind of. If I get one of the two, I mean, we don't want to see Dublin win. We're sick of seeing. I mean, Dublin is in this case is kind of like the Yankees are in baseball. I mean, they love them or everybody hates them. So I do have a couple of questions. I was reading your bio, and you've had some pretty awesome assignments. And then I said, wow, this guy must be old, because one of your assignments, the guy who replaced you was Michael Collins, and I was like, wow, this guy's been around a while.
That's
so I have a question for you.
He placed me in Germany. He placed me in Germany 7 years ago. Yep.
Not the Michael Collins. So
Michael Collins. That would really make me very old indeed.
That's what I was going to say. This guy's been around a while. So I have two questions for you. Who's the most influential person you've ever met? Or who's the person who had the biggest influence on, you've had an opportunity to meet a lot of very famous people. I mean, and obviously I'm going to take John and I out of this equation. So.
Well, I remember back in the 90s meeting Nelson Mandela in South Africa. We traveled down there with the foreign minister at the time. I was the press spokesman. to meet Mandela and to brief him on the Good Friday Agreement. It must have been 1998 or thereabouts, sometime, I think in the summer of 98. And I remember going into his office and sitting there, and then he came in and he sat there, and something had happened in Ireland that day, and the minister asked me to brief President Mandela, on what had happened. I think it was an opinion poll or whatever that suggested that there was a strong support for the Good Friday Agreement across the island of Ireland. So I remember that very vividly. But of course, I've had a lot of experiences like that. I mean, I've met Barack Obama. I've met, Queen Elizabeth II. I presented credentials to her. Presented credentials to your current president, President Trump. So I've had quite a few, engagements with senior people. And the reality is, most of them, when you strip away the pomp and ceremony that surrounds them, are ordinary people that have their vices and their virtues. And I don't get overawed talking to them. My mother drove it into me way back when I was a child, saying, "You're as good as anyone in the world, by the way. You can, you shouldn't kowtow that to anybody. You're a good Waterford man, and you need not be in any way feeling of being inadequate in any company in the world." And that's the way I've tried to operate during my career as a diplomat for Ireland.
Yeah, very true. I had a teacher who gave us two similar pieces of advice. One is, he said, just remember, he said, no matter who you're standing across, he said, they put their trousers on one leg at a time. He had another one that was a lot more colorful, but we're going to leave that for when we can meet, when this COVID is over and we can meet over a pint. And I'll tell you the second one. And the second part of that question is,
I look forward to the pint as well.
And the second part is, so if, let's put it this way, if John or I were to get a hold of your cell phone, what's the coolest phone number that you have in your cell phone?
I have Boris Johnson's number, because Boris was a friend of mine way back in Brussels in the 1980s, when Boris was a journalist. Sorry, it was 1990s, the early 90s, when Boris was a journalist with the Daily Telegraph, and I was the press spokesman for the Irish government. So I've known him since then, and we were quite friendly in Brussels, and then we've kept in contact over the years. And then when I was in London, he was the mayor of London first, and then he was the foreign secretary. So I had a fair bit of contact with him there, and I still have his private number, which I don't use very often. I occasionally text him I congratulated him, for example, when he became prime minister. I also texted him when he went into hospital with COVID, and I texted him when he came out and expressed my relief that he'd survived the ordeal. So that's probably the number that most people would recognize on my cell phone.
That's a pretty good one.
Yep, not bad.
I wasn't quite sure if we're going to go with Bono or The Edge, or I know you spent time in Malaysia. If we got Imelda Marcus's private number or something like that.
No, Imelda Marcus, no, I never came across her. I mean, I did meet a lot of people in Malaysia. I loved them. I loved my time in Malaysia. It was a great time to be there, and I really enjoyed the experience. But I don't have many phone numbers from my days in Malaysia, because when you change phones, you tend to lose a lot of your numbers somehow, I find.
Yeah. How has the field of diplomacy changed over your career?
Oh, completely. I mean, when I first joined the service, my first posting, diplomacy was basically a closed doors business. Everything happened behind closed doors. It happened in meeting rooms, in foreign ministries, and so on. Now a lot of diplomacy happens in the open air. It happens in the Twitter sphere. It happens on Facebook. It happens in social media. It happens in the media environment. For example, my first ambassador in Delhi in 1980, he was a very good ambassador, did a very good job, worked hard. I don't ever remember him giving a public speech, because in those days, ambassadors didn't do that kind of thing. Whereas now, I mean, if I was in a normal environment, I'd be giving a dozen speeches a week at different events. So, I mean, it's become a much more front of house business rather than, backstairs stuff, talking to diplomats in confidence. No, we still do that stuff. We still do this sort of, I mean, what you see from me on Twitter is what I'm doing publicly, but you won't see my meetings. Like I had a lunch today with people from the State Department, but you won't see that on Twitter, because that's not of any relevance to anybody, and I don't want to breach confidences and so on. But we have a lot of that kind of stuff going on. But a lot more of our work now is in the public domain.
Interesting. So, with all of that work and the nature of your work, can you just talk a little bit about how you've adapted or had to adjust your daily regimen with COVID, and also just talk a little bit about the poetry readings on Facebook. If people aren't familiar with that,
Maybe on
I
Twitter,
suggest
actually,
they check that out.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, diplomacy is a face-to-face business. I mean, you're here because you can be the face of Ireland in interacting with the administration and Congress here in the United States. Obviously, that can't be done now. It has to be done virtually, and it's done by telephone, by email, and by Zoom calls like this. So it's been a total change. We've adapted. I mean, the embassy has been working remotely by and large for the last 8 months, and we've managed to keep it going. We've managed to keep our work going. Nobody's happy with it. We're all yearning for the day we can get back to having functions here for 50, 100 people, getting Ireland's message across, being out and about, attending events all over the United States, traveling widely, spreading the Irish message wherever we can find an audience. That's all had to be abandoned. But I'm still doing a lot of Zoom calls, and most of our consulates regularly. We have 7 consulates around the US. They regularly call upon me to talk at an event that they organize for the community in their area. So I'm doing a lot of stuff, but it's not satisfactory. And you miss that face-to-face contact dimension. Mm-hmm. As far as the poetry is concerned, I mean, this happened by accident. In 2015, for the anniversary of the birth of the 150th anniversary of the birth of W.B. Yeats, I started tweeting on a daily basis some quotes from Yeats. And they were so popular that people at the end of the year said, "Don't stop doing it." I said, "No, I'm going to stop doing it." "No, you shouldn't. Keep it going. It's the thing we like most on Twitter every day. We love it. It gives us inspiration. Keep it up." So I've kept it up now for the last 5 years, and I will keep it up for as long as I'm on Twitter, as long as Twitter exists.
Is it just Yeats, or do you go all poets?
No. I mean, I did Yeats for the first year, but now I do everything. Now I do, I've done medieval monks' poems in old manuscripts that are translated from Irish or Latin into English, and I've done poets in their 20s, and I do, the well-known Irish poets like Seamus Heaney, Patrick Kavanagh, Austin Clarke, and all that. So I do the whole range of I have a big collection of poetry that I've acquired over the years. Not that I'm a fanatical poetry reader, by no means am I that, but I just find it sometimes can come in useful. It's a source of inspiration, source of comfort. It's a quiet medium. It's not noisy. It's a quiet medium, which profits from being read quietly and in the evening or whatever. I do that. I pick out a quote and I put it online the following day. And during the pandemic, I started doing daily readings, which proved to be very popular. I put one out there. I don't do it on a daily basis anymore. I do it about twice a week, maybe. I put one out there over the weekend. Seamus Heaney's From the Cure at Troy, the poem about making hope and history rhyme, which Joe Biden did a version of there a couple of months ago as part of his campaign. And that's been seen by 10,000 people already. So there is a market out there. There are people out there on Twitter who don't just want to engage in trolling other people, who actually want to do things that are positive and life enhancing. And I hope that my poetry contributes to that atmosphere.
It certainly does.
Well, you mentioned Kavanagh. I mean, growing up, I dodged having to do Peg, so I didn't have Peg beaten into me for the Leaving Cert, but I had Cashel and Orr instead. But we did all the poetry. I mean, Kavanagh was the one that always appealed to me because he spoke in the vernacular. It's not like T.S. Eliot or something like that, but and obviously he
not far away from you there.
Well, that was the thing. He wasn't far. So I was very young when he died, and but I knew, like, he had that brother that was a chancellor that, was kept on every time the brother ran out of money, he uncovered something else that Patrick had started to work on, But I mean, he was considered different, but only because he was very intelligent, but but
he wasn't formally educated.
Right, but my favorite story was Kavanagh and Brendan Behan ran into each other on O'Connell Street at 9 o'clock one morning, and they decided to go for a pint. And at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they had to give up because they couldn't find a pub in Dublin that would serve the two of them. It was either one or both of them were barred from most of the pubs in Dublin. But the funny thing is, I'm not getting political, but a guy whose poetry was a lot of it was turned into song, was Bobby Sands. Yeah. Someone gave me a book of his poetry as a kid.
I'm not familiar with his work, but are
you a fan of Christy? Are you a fan of Christy Moore?
Yeah, I love that poem. I love that song about St. Brendan the Navigator.
Right. Well,
Gibraltar.
Christy Moore has a song called Macklehatton about the local guy making poaching. That was written by Bobby Sands. And there's several other songs that he has sung that were written. And like I said, not getting political because, you know, I don't have a bar at the minute, but when I did have a bar, 3 things we never discussed was religion, politics, and the weather.
Stick to drink, I think. Stick to talking about drink.
You have nothing better to talk about than those 3 things. I mean, we really don't need you in the bar, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? And obviously that's from growing up in Ireland where, you know, even though the weather hasn't changed. Now you're down in the sunny southeast. Although I put a caveat on that. I spent 3 months
about a degree warmer than Cavan.
Huh? Sorry?
I said it's always a degree warmer than Cavan.
Well, the funny thing is, my father, I moved back from New York to help my father move from Cavan to Dungarvan, and I spent 3 months there because I have a brother and sister that went to school in Dungarvan. So I spent 3 months setting up the bar and getting everything ready, and it rained every day. So I wanted to drive out to Cashel and take an angle grinder to the sign that said "Welcome to the sunny southeast" because I never saw the sun.
If you go there now, you'll see lots of sun, I can tell you.
But you're in the same boat as you can. I can't go.
There are lots of sunny people.
I don't know about the sunny people.
Well, Ambassador, before we let you go, we've got a question from one of our members. Bob from New Jersey wants to know, do you see a possibility that a Major League Baseball game could ever be played in Ireland, similar to when the Yankees played the Red Sox in London 2 years ago?
I think it would be great. It would be great to work on that. I don't know if we have a space. I mean, they have lots of cricket grounds in Britain, which I guess were probably used. Were they used when the cricket grounds?
No, they used the soccer set. No, Crow Park would work.
Would it? Okay, yeah.
We might need your help with the GAA, but Crow Park would work.
That's a brilliant idea. It shouldn't be a problem for the GAA because Rounders was originally a game that the GAA regarded as an Irish game. I can remember, by the way, when I was growing up, we played Rounders a lot on the beach in Tramore and Woodstown. It seems to have disappeared from
wait a
our
second.
culture somehow.
Are you familiar with a guy named Bill Barry, former football player from Waterford? No. Bill Barry was involved in. They actually played baseball on the beaches of Tramore in the late 50s, early 60s.
Yes, but a little bit before my time.
Yeah. Okay, and one of the guys involved was. I'm sorry?
No, I said that's a little bit before my time. I don't remember. I remember Rounders being played a lot. I remember family games of Rounders. It was a very popular game, but I haven't seen it played now for a long, long time. I don't know what's happened to it.
Kids don't go outside anymore. Everything is done on their phone and their iPods and their PS.
In Waterford now, you see a lot of. I mean, in Waterford, I'm astonished when I go there now. A lot of kids playing hurling on the streets. You know, playing hurling in a little park or whatever. It's quite popular. Yeah. Because hurling has become much more popular because Waterford have been strong over the last 10 years. Although we haven't managed to win the All Ireland, but we have a strong team.
Don't worry, you're getting there. Slowly but surely.
Yeah, we're getting there. But
interesting.
No, I mean, look, you haven't asked me about baseball. My wife and I got really into baseball there last year when the Nationals got into the to the playoffs, and for the last 3 games we watched all of them from start to finish, and we were on the edge of our seat. It was a lot of Irish people think that baseball is a very dull game because it lasts for so long and the scoring is quite low, even compared with cricket, for example. Although the Irish have taken to cricket in recent years as well. We're now one of the 12 test-playing countries in the world, playing cricket at the highest level. But a lot of people think that this game is boring. But actually, when you go to a game, it's a great experience. I love going to National Stadium. I haven't been to Yankees. I've been to Yankee Stadium a number of years ago, and I must go again. I haven't been to Red Sox Stadium either, which I'd like to do too, because it's got a certain iconic status. I've been there for an event, but I haven't been there for a game. So I'd like to go to those things. But I enjoy now. If I sit down and watch a game of baseball, you get into it, and particularly the playoffs. I enjoy the playoffs because it's a real struggle. Whereas some of the early season games, you lose half the games and it's not a problem. As long as you get over 50%, you're probably likely to qualify for the playoffs. So that can be a little bit sort of lacking in drama. But certainly, the playoffs last year and again this year were really quite dramatic and really very good television.
Sure.
Mr. Ambassador, I would like to extend on behalf of the Irish American Baseball Society and the Irish American Baseball Hall of Fame that when, as you said, the dust settles on all of this, that if there's a game or a stadium that I would love to go with you as your guide.
Okay.
And I think between your connections and my connections, we can get good tickets to see one of those games. And I can, we know a lot of people now. I'm not sure how big your security detail is.
I don't have one, so I'm okay. You can be my security detail. You can be my security detail, okay?
I'm pretty big, so I can take good care of
Throw yourself in front of any bullet that may be coming my way.
Believe me, trust me.
Or maybe a baseball coming my way.
Believe me, I definitely do not want to. I've been known for starting industrial or international incidents. I don't want, because I banned the singing of Danny Boy about 10 years ago, and I've dealt with my fair share of international incidents. I don't need any more.
Very good, very good.
Do you have a favorite player?
Well, obviously, I mean, I really like this guy Soto, who plays for the Nationals. Because I'm living in Washington, I've tended to fall into following the Nationals. Although, because I saw my first baseball game in Kansas City in '74, I tend to support the Royals as well, and I also support the Chiefs. So after many years of the Chiefs not doing very well, I was privileged this year to be able to see the Chiefs win the Super Bowl, and they might even win it again this year, from what I can see from the current games. But I had great fun with my colleague in San Francisco. We were exchanging bets about who would win and having a bit of fun on social media. But so yeah, I tend to be Nationals plus the Kansas City Royals.